But first up is this outrageous development, further confirmation that our republic's under attack, our constitutional republic's under attack by top officials at the DOJ, FBI, and probably other agencies. That in 2017, there was a discussions among DOJ and FBI leadership to overthrow the President of the United States. Now, this information first came out in September of last year, where Rod Rosenstein and Andrew McCabe reportedly had been discussing whether they would invoke the 25th Amendment, which is an amendment that is used in theory, or would be used in theory, to remove a president if he was incapacitated, either mentally or physically unable to perform the duties of his office, not because you disagreed with him. But that's what they wanted to do. And they were also talking about, Rod Rosenstein was, again, he was the number 2 at the Justice Department, and for purposes of the Mueller investigation and the Russia investigation, he was the Attorney General, the acting Attorney General. He was talking about whether or not to wear a wire into the Oval Office to record President Trump, I guess evidently to entrap him, or you gather evidence against him for the nefarious purposes I've described. Now, when that came out, it was outrageous. Nothing was done about it. Rod Rosenstein has yet to be questioned by Congress about his involvement in those discussions. As best as I can tell, no one's been questioned in Congress about these discussions. So Andrew McCabe, the corrupt number 2 under James Comey, he was made acting FBI director when President Trump fired Comey, quite rightly, last year. Andrew McCabe was angry at President Trump, evidently, for his firing of his mentor and buddy, James Comey. So he and as I said, Rosenstein were discussing with other FBI and DOJ officials this attempt to subvert the Constitution. Now, they didn't see it as subverting the Constitution, nor will they admit to that, but that's effectively what it was. And McCabe was out describing this in greater detail, attacking President Trump, violating all sorts of, in my view, rules and regulations and laws about the confidentiality of FBI investigations and communications directly with the president, evidently. And he was confirming and reconfirming that this coup attempt took place. Now, why is it a coup? Because there was no good faith basis to remove the president. These were unelected bureaucrats. In the case of Rosenstein, he was an appointed bureaucrat confirmed by the Senate, but not a cabinet official. And they are talking about removing the president simply because he fired someone they liked, James Comey. There was no evidence that he had done anything wrong beyond making that personnel decision they did not like. No evidence he had obstructed justice. No evidence he was colluding with the Russians. There had never been any evidence he was colluding with the Russians. And yet you had these senior DOJ and FBI officials talk about removing him from office under the auspices of the 25th Amendment. Now, using a constitutional provision in an unconstitutional way, that's a coup. Removing the head of our government in unauthorized, unconstitutional ways would be a coup. And I tell you, if these were generals, there's a train coming by, excuse me. If these were generals and colonels in the Pentagon talking about removing the president, do you think the liberal media would have any trouble figuring out what it was? It would be called a coup. But because these are bureaucrats over at the Justice Department and the FBI, it's more a concern about, well, why didn't they like President Trump, as opposed to the outrage of the seditious conspiracy against him in our country. And you know, when and I'm sure you've watched these updates before. If you haven't, you've seen my speeches. I get upset about this attack on President Trump, not because I think President Trump is a great president. I mean, I agree with him on a lot of things. I disagree with him on a few things. But I think he's the president, or I recognize he's the lawful president of the United States. And in order to remove him or impede his presidency, you've got to follow the rules. Now, if you want to impede his presidency politically, God bless America, we have the First Amendment. You can petition your government, you know, do your protests. Congress can yell and do its oversight, and that's politics. But to abuse the powers to prosecute someone, FBI powers to spy on someone, the government powers to spy on our adversaries abroad and use that as a backdoor way to target President Trump and his team. One of the other things that's confirmed that McCabe and Rosenstein were discussing was the Mueller appointment, the special counsel appointment. So out of this coup discussion, out of this sedition discussion, flows the Mueller special counsel. So the successor to these coup discussions is the Mueller special counsel, and it's the continuation of what is really a slow motion effort to illicitly overthrow the President of the United States. And you may not like President Trump, but you ought to like our Constitution, and you ought to be concerned when you have deep state bureaucrats who think they know better than you and know better than our founders and our constitutional system, acting in a way to remove someone elected to office illicitly and improperly. Outrageous. I mean, this is how we lose a republic, folks. It's laid out there for you. And the media won't talk about it like this. President Trump understands it. He's calling it a coup. But you've got to recognize the dire threat to our system of government, our constitutional republic, caused by these bureaucrats who are out of control, who think they are answerable to no one. Call it what you will, the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, the administrative state. I've called it before the alt government. They literally think they are more powerful. They act as if they're unaccountable. In many ways they are. Congress isn't providing accountability. As I said, Rosenstein hasn't been questioned about this at all. In fact, he's going to be leaving probably the next month because they've appointed the new Attorney General, Bill Barr, and the President has appointed a new Deputy Attorney General, so Rosenstein's on his way out. Will he ever be questioned about this? I don't know. Senator Graham at the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side, Senator Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, you should call him. You should call the Judiciary Committee. Find out, I don't know, I should have thought about this before I started talking to you, but go online, see who's on the Judiciary Committee, call those senators. And if your senators or senator from your home state is on the Judiciary Committee, especially call them and let them know you want a full investigation and accounting here. Now, of course, the Attorney General, the new Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Barr, he needs to get on the ball here too. Will he? I don't know. I don't know him personally. I don't know if he's going to be have the kind of the bravery and the courage to flip over some tables at the Justice Department and do a criminal investigation of abuse of authority in office here. Remember, it wasn't just Mr. McCabe. It wasn't just Mr. Rosenstein. There were other top officials at DOJ and FBI involved in these discussions. In fact, a top lawyer, Mr. James Baker, former FBI counsel, another Comey crony, testified to the House, I think, over we still don't have the full testimony, outrageously. He supposedly testified that they did try to talk to cabinet officials and got a few votes potentially for this coup. This seditious conspiracy, and I printed out the law that defines seditious conspiracy because I want to educate you about what seditious conspiracy is. Sedition. Sedition is efforts to overthrow the government, and seditious conspiracy is related to that. And it's 18 U.S.C. section 2384. If two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to impose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. It's up to 20 years. What I described to you, did that sound like seditious conspiracy? And let me tell you about Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe, Judicial Watch is an expert on Andrew McCabe's corruption at the FBI. It was Judicial Watch that exposed that Andrew McCabe, whose wife had run for state office in Virginia and received well over $500,000, up to $700,000+ from Clinton crony Terry McAuliffe, then Virginia governor, corrupt in his own right, was involved, of course McCabe was involved in all these investigations, including the Clinton investigations. Now he says, well, he didn't have to recuse himself because the campaign was over by the time he was involved fully in the Clinton investigations. Well, the fact is that isn't good enough. And the fact is Judicial Watch found that despite his protestations, he didn't have to recuse himself. He actually did recuse himself from the Clinton investigations, but only a week before the election. So there was a secret recusal by McCabe. And of course, McCabe, the documents that Judicial Watch uncovered, was directing the PR response to the allegations that were out there about the conflict as a result of his wife being on the hook to the Clinton gang while he was assistant FBI director, and more specifically why he was, before that, head of the Washington field office of the FBI. And it was Judicial Watch that uncovered this secret recusal. And then later, he was fired as a result of an IG investigation. The Inspector General of the Justice Department concluded that he lied repeatedly to his colleagues in the IG about his involvement and whether he had permission to leak to the media about the Clinton Foundation investigation. You know, and ironically, the leak he was accused of doing was something to suggest that the FBI, he was trying to defend the FBI, saying that they were doing the Clinton Foundation investigation and it hadn't been shut down. So that's the irony there. I don't know if he lied. He's been accused of lying and he's under criminal investigation, but that's the reason he was fired. Now he's out there saying the reason he was fired was because of his decision to open a Russia investigation into President Trump. Well, I wish that were the case, because he should have been fired for that, because that was an abuse of authority. There was no legitimate reason for him to begin a counterintelligence investigation into President Trump. Just think about that. He's the sitting president of the United States, and you have some bureaucrat at the FBI decide he's going to start investigating his communications with Russia. If he has significant concerns in that regard, he should just resign. Did they investigate Obama because he was doing seemingly everything possible to advance the interests of Iran? Of course not. We start investigating presidents when they start behaving in a way that you pretend advance the interests of a foreign power. Well, that can't be the law. And of course it isn't the law. It's an abuse. McCabe, of course, signed on to one of these fraudulent FISA warrant applications. So he is severely ethically challenged. He's facing prosecution. Now, supposedly there are documents out there because he also, like his boss Comey, wrote secret CYA memos, again, abusing his authority, about his conversations not only within the FBI, about his targeting of Trump, this coup attempt, but even his communications with President Trump. So there's a lot to be uncovered here. And of course, the media isn't going to do it. They've moved on. I don't even know what they're covering today. Who knows what they're covering today? I don't know what the latest flavor is. It's hard to keep track, and I keep track, but you know, who knows what the latest flavor is, what the latest crisis or pretend crisis they're covering. But there's been a coup attempt against the President of the United States, and it's important that we stand against it. And Judicial Watch has been standing against these efforts, and we've been calling it a coup, seditious conspiracy, soft coup, slow motion coup, no matter, however you want to call it. We've been calling it that for the years that the president has been in office. So we're not going to forget about it, and to that end, Judicial Watch sued this week for the coup documents. You going to record the president? Did you really record the president? Give us the documents. Give us the recordings. Give us these memos. Give us the communications about your plotting against the President of the United States in contravention of your oath of office and the Constitution. You know, I told you the elements of this coup were disclosed more specifically in September of last year. Now, Judicial Watch immediately filed a series of FOIA requests, 3 in total, that have been ignored by this rogue Justice Department. Yes, rogue Justice Department that sees itself as above the Constitution. And so Judicial Watch is now in federal court suing to get the coup documents. You know, President Trump may survive this coup, but will a future president, when faced with similar bureaucratic conniving and seditiousness, will they survive it? This is why we've got to stand fast against it, ensure accountability, and if Congress doesn't want to do it, if the Justice Department doesn't want to do it, and the Justice Department is going to want to do it, Mueller, as I said, is a successor to this slow motion coup. You can bet Mueller's team of partisan prosecutors who are never Trumpers. Remember, again, it was Judicial Watch who exposed that the number two deputy in Mueller's operation, Andrew Weissman, is an anti-Trumper. He sent an email to Sally Yates, who was the Obama holdover acting attorney general in the beginning of President Trump's term. Now, Sally Yates outrageously tried to torpedo the president's initial travel restriction orders, saying she wouldn't defend him in court. Complete abdication of her oath and her responsibility to the president and the people of the United States. And she was rightly and immediately fired by the president. We uncovered an email from Andrew Weissman to her saying, I couldn't be more, I was in awe of her. He was in awe of her decision to subvert the rule of law and the Constitution. And there were separate reports by the Wall Street Journal that Andrew Weissman, again, number 2 under Mueller, he's basically running the operation for Mueller, went to the election night party in New York City at the main headquarters of Hillary Clinton's election night party. It didn't turn out to be much of a party, but this top Justice Department official is at this partisan, what was to be a partisan celebration of Hillary's election, and now he's leading the point against the Trump team. When's it going to end? I don't know when it's going to end. Everyone was all excited this week because there were news reports that the Justice Department was expecting, specifically Attorney General Barr, that the Mueller operation would come to a close, at least with respect to President Trump, and they'd be giving them a report, as the regulations require. Now there's a report today, well, that may not be the case. So I don't know what to believe. My suspicion is the Mueller operation is never really going to end, and if it ends in form, it will continue informally through other Justice Department harassing operations targeting President Trump. That President Trump is just going to always be harassed by the Justice Department. This is unless Attorney General Barr steps up and defends President Trump and the rule of law. You know, the dishonest, morally dishonest, intellectually dishonest establishment, you know, when they bring these attorney generals in, especially Attorney General Barr, you know, are you going to stand up against President Trump? Well, the answer and the question ought to be, not are you going to stand up against President Trump? Are you going to stand up to President Trump? But are you going to stand up for President Trump? Are you going to stand up for President Trump in the face of this abuse? Are you going to stand up for the rule of law in the face of this abuse? That's the real test. Because the establishment thinks that President Trump should be turned out of office through an illegal coup. They don't have any trouble abusing the spy powers of the government to target him. They don't have any trouble pretending or trying to enforce this rule that he can't be president, that all of his acts as president should be constrained. And to the degree he exercises his lawful authority as president should be used against him in a court of law. We need an attorney general who's going to stand up against that. Protecting the office of the presidency as the Constitution envisioned it from those who would bring a wrecking ball to it.